This conference will now be recorded.
All right. So, as always, everything that we're going to be talking about is for educational purposes only, and nothing is intended as any type of investment advice. All right. So, let's talk about what went on today. So, we had not the greatest pre-market, but we ended up getting some really great moves that came into the morning. So, the first thing that we were looking at was NVDA, and if you go back to our YouTube channel, you can see when we talked about it, exactly our game plan of what we were looking to happen. So we know we had those prints that were at 160 on that ask side of things. So we needed those prints to be satisfied before we could end up coming back down. And it was just an absolutely perfect trade because we ended up coming all the way up to 160, 150, which overall is that as much as I would have expected them to make on it? No, but you know what? We have the dominant market maker, the bigger market maker that was down at that 155 level. So what happened is afterwards we got just a beautiful trigger, and I mean, this thing just made for an absolutely phenomenal trade. And even if you missed that one, coming down the second time, right about 10 o'clock, we got another trigger that brought us underneath that 160 and made for another really big range trade coming back in. Now, unfortunately, once we got to pretty much about 10:30 to 11, we just started going into pretty much consolidation type trading. And you can see that when you look at the chart, which each bar just pretty much overlaps itself, just not really anything too smooth going on out there. One thing you do want to remember is we know we have those huge sell prints at 155, but one thing that we do also have is we got 157 was hit 3 times this morning on that bid side. So NVDA is certainly showing that selling coming towards that downside. And once, until those prints overall at 155 are satisfied, this thing still is going to be extremely bearish. Next thing looking at was Apple. Now, Apple was another one where we know we have huge sell prints down at that 175 level. All right, same type of deal. We jumped up coming into the morning. We can see right here at 9:30, we had 180 at 182.73, 447,000 shares that came in, and just an absolutely beautiful move underneath there. Perfect trigger, and this thing just continued on its way down. Now, there are some ask prints coming back up. Apple, and we're going to talk about Apple right now, and I want to go over what we were talking about, those 195 and 196 prints. So Apple, you have to understand something, is going to have the best traders in the world in it. But not only the best traders, you're going to have a lot of people that are going out there and they're going to buy things for the longer term. Let me ask you guys a question. Anyone here think at some point Apple will never be back up above 200? Does anyone honestly think that Apple at some point is not going to be back up above 200? And I'm not talking about prints. I'm not talking about anything. I'm just talking about the company specifically. And the answer is obviously no. Okay, everyone Apple is Apple. You know what? They're going to lose some market shares and blah 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 blah. But it's Apple. I mean, we were talking about one of the first company to go over $1 trillion in market value. I mean, it's going to end up coming back. So those are longer term prints, and we have to understand that. The prints that we saw in there, the amounts that we saw coming back in are telling us that somebody's sitting in them. Right now, they're taking a loss, but they have forever. Okay, if anyone ever read anything or knows much about Warren Buffett, that guy will literally take positions and he will sit in them until he is right. And there's a lot of investors that are out there that take and they look within a company and they understand the company itself. So they have the money to literally just buy and just hold until they end up being correct. And that was one of the signs. If you go back to one of our meetings, I don't know which one it was, but we talked about those prints at 195 and 196 on the day that it ended up coming, one of the bigger down days that we saw coming into the market itself. We knew that those were going to be longer term prints. So everything that we're seeing coming in at this moment, I am not worried about those whatsoever. At some point, that person will be correct, but it is not in a level of trading that you would ever do within, over pretty much 6 months to a year in that area. So those prints themselves, not worried about. The dominant market maker, once again, someone is setting up for that down move. We know that at overall 175 is where we're going to be expecting this thing to go below. We had TNXP. Now, this was a beautiful trade. Excuse me. Beautiful trade. We have ask prints sitting up at that 9 level. Now, one thing that you do have to understand is these cheaper stocks. Okay, when we see when the top, almost always at the top of when the cheaper stocks are going to be done, you're going to see buying. So the key, obviously to the upside. So the key with these cheaper stocks is to make sure you're not waiting until the stock has already moved an exorbitant amount. because these things they're 15 minutes of fame a lot of the time. Now that doesn't just mean that the stock is going to be is not going to go back above them, but you can't count on that. Tonix Pharmaceuticals, I can almost guarantee none of you have ever heard of that before, unless you technically work in the pharmaceutical industry. I can almost guarantee you've never heard of it. You have no idea what the company is, and neither do I. Neither does anyone else. So there's a reason that it popped up like that, but you have to understand. So we do have ask prints way above, but when you look at the stock itself, you could kind of just see that it's pretty much dead. The only way I would ever trade this stock again is if out of nowhere, all of a sudden you see huge volume starting to come back in. Thanks, Rich. Just curious. So why are the highest percentage plays to the down 175 and not to the up 195? I get that makes sense now, but if Apple hits 185 now, which one makes more sense in the short term? Well, see, the thing is that we already classified those as longer term prints based off of what we saw. So them being those longer term prints, it makes a lot more sense based off of everything else that we're seeing out there that the down movement is going to be before Apple's going to end up running up $25. All right, so if we go back to Apple and you look at the actual price itself, I said this before yesterday to somebody, but right now Apple's sitting at 178.51. So give or take, you're talking about $25 going back towards that 200 level. So does it make more sense for this stock to break below that before going up $25 or go up $25 to then come all the way back down? Which one just makes a more logical sense when you look at the actual prints themselves? All right, just like we were talking about yesterday in a range. Right now, Apple's at $5.10. Okay, so the easiest, I mean, this is actually a perfect example. So trades $5.30 on average. So what would make more sense? This stock breaking its low to move another 20 cents, or for it to move $5.10 up from the bottom to then make another 20 cents towards the upside. You see what I mean there? It just logically makes way more sense than for them to go all the way back up than to come all the way back down. You will not statistically see that very often, if ever. I mean, I can't even give you an example off the top of my head the last time I've seen that. It happens, don't get me wrong, but not very often. We are all about percentages. We have to play what the higher percentage is going to be. All right, so back to TNXP. Unless I see something that has a huge amount that comes back into it and gives us a huge trigger to the upside, I have no interest in it whatsoever in the afternoon. Now, ANF was a really nice trade earlier, but it didn't last very long. So if you would have held it, which I personally probably wouldn't have, well, I mean, I personally did not. So, I mean, I know exactly what I would have done. But after we jump back up, we got beautiful selling as we were coming back down into that 21 level. We ended up breaking down to about 2030. So for a stock like this, I mean, it's made an overall huge move compared to what it usually does. But we knew that in our morning meeting, just based off the pre-market and the amount of volume that we saw coming back into it. But it just wasn't one of the better trades going out there. And most of the things that we've seen, once again, from about 10:30 to 11 and then 11 on, have just been trading very consolidated. I really don't have much interest in this. I don't see much of a range for us to be able to take any type of trade coming back into it. On the longer term, longer side of things, I really haven't seen it since 11 o'clock. I just haven't been paying attention because of the way that it's trading and how low and sporadic the volume actually is. So just not really much there for the afternoon at all. And then we have Express, EXPR, which is now all of a sudden out of nowhere making a really nice move back towards that upside. Biggest thing, once again, with these cheaper stocks, we need to see big bursts of buying coming in. For instance, like this. If you see what's going on right here at 646 and up to 647, that's one burst. Okay, that one burst is telling us someone is taking a big position in it. If you take a big position, that means they need to make money. Now, right now, as we're coming up to the 675 level, you can see we don't have that. There's no big bursts that are coming in that tell us that someone else needs to make more money to continue it back up. Excuse me. So coming back, I don't know what's going on with my throat lately, guys. I apologize for the constant coughing, but coming back up to that 675, until I see more, I don't really see much there that really shows us anything that we're going to be continuing to watch. We're going to need some, a bigger burst of prints to come back in. So that person, it shows us that someone else needs to make more money. Quick question in NVDA. With this consolidation, does it still have to fill today's range of 950? So NVDA, and I know I talk a lot, so it's kind of hard to catch everything that I say. NVDA, you have to understand something. How many days, okay, has NVDA not been 200? Because Henry, it's a phenomenal question, and I want you to understand this because this happens in many stocks that we're going to, especially when we're paying attention to them, because that means something drastic usually has happened. But if we count them, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So give or take 10 days. Okay, the average is based off 20 days. So what happens is you're basing an average off the stock when it traded at 200 as well as when it traded at $1 at 150. Now, statistically speaking, a stock at 200 compared to a stock at 150, which one is going to have the higher range? Of course, 200, right? So what's happening right now is that 955 average is not completely accurate. It's not completely off, but you can't use 955 anymore because it's such a split within a $50 move, guys. It's a huge move, right? So what you have to do is you have to kind of put it down a little bit. So when you look at that, you want to look at what's going on as the stock has been here and look at how much the stock has been trading, which is right around that $5 to $6 area. So overall, that range, you can't use that as, okay, well, it should be trading another $4 today. Does everyone understand what I mean? You have to go based off what the stock is doing at that price. A $5 stock that all of a sudden becomes a $100 stock, well, guess what? Your range is going to be completely different. So the average is the average, but you also have to understand the average is going to be way higher because of the fact of where it used to trade. So as of right this second, the NVDA really does, based off of what it's been doing as it's been trading at this price level, it really doesn't have to do much more than it already has. All right, so coming over to the gainer side of things, it's looking pretty bleak. So ADIL, I saw made a really nice move before, but this is another one where it kind of just looks like it's dying out a bit. Overall, it's still holding within this consolidation, although it's a huge consolidation there. So I'm going to put it on our side list, but there's nothing really there that I have any expectations of. The reason I'm going to put it there is because of the amount of volume, the amount that it's up 121%. So there's no, it's worth keeping an eye on, but there's nothing there for an actual trade yet. Something would have to change. And then ANF, we've already spoken about. We have ASNS, which I put out there this morning. It's made some nice moves, but guys, it's just not a good trade. There's just not consistent volume that's coming back into it for us to really do anything. Since the stock price changed 25%, can you make a temporary change to daily volume range by 25%? Absolutely. That's a good way to go about it. I personally don't do it that calculated. What I do is I literally just look at the daily chart of how much on average just by looking at it. And this might be, from experience and just, years of kind of just looking at it. I just kind of make up the average based off of what I see. I don't even spend too much time on it. You know what I'm saying? I really just kind of look at exactly what it's been doing and kind of go from there. So, it's like I said, it's been like $5, $6, somewhere in that area. So I kind of put it at that point. But you know what? There's no reason in the world you can't do that. It's just that's not. I see. The thing is the stock market completely calculated when it comes to things like that. Now, yeah, you could talk about Fibonacci, and you could there's parts of the stock market that people will argue are completely calculated, but in my opinion, it really isn't. Because even like if you talk about Fibonacci, that's one of the best areas that you could be looking at actual percent. So the percent retracements, and I'm not going to go into what Fibonacci is, but if you look at that, even there, it's never going to be to the exact cent every single time, and there's nothing like that. So by just moving at 25%, you're going to give yourself a good average of what it should be, but don't go based off of that's the exact cent that you're seeing out there. So back to ASNS. But it's not consistent. The volume's too sporadic, and I don't like trading stocks like that. If it's not consistently trading, then I don't want to be in it because I have no idea what's going to happen after a moment when there is nothing going on within it. So it's another one that we are going to put on our side list, but it's one that unless the personality changes and we start to see more consistency within it, not for me. ALQA, we have 9.6 million shares. Another great stock this morning, but 4,000 shares being traded. Absolutely nothing I could do there. CHS, we are going to put this on our list. And the reason we're going to put this on our list is just because yesterday's story. If I saw this stock just normally, I'm going to tell you right now, there's no way in the world that I would ever put this on our list or I would ever trade it. But you could see its personality is changing a bit. And once again, I was saying before in the chat room, I would never look at this stock for anything more than a day trade. And when I say a day trade on a cheaper stock like this, you're talking about 25 to 50 cent increments coming back in. But we do know there is some really good buying towards the top that came up the first time right before we started our meeting. And we're starting to trend back towards there. So there's no reason in the world we can't see volume out of nowhere to come into this and really start to get this thing moving. So it's at the bottom of my list, but it's certainly something that I will be paying attention to. Oh, God. Excuse me, guys. All right, so coming over to the loser side of things, there's just nothing really here. I looked at this, shortly before we even started our meeting, and I don't see anything that I have any type of interest in. I mean, everything is just absolute garbage. CPRX, I mean, just complete quant stock, not really doing any type of trading. HTZ, I did not see before, and this is definitely something I am going to put on there. But I would like to see volume increase. It's 10,000 shares is usually the minimum that I start looking at. I gotta get that. We need you help. You know what? I always end up. When the seasons change, I always end up getting sick. I think it's just because my throat is dry. But I'm definitely will. I'll make sure that I'm not going anywhere. But HTZ, if you come over here and look at here, beautiful bid prints at that 19 level. So that is probably one of my favorite stocks, just based off show of hand, not the way it's moving. I really would love to see this volume start to pick up and be able to give us that move towards that upside and then really be able to give us that, that trigger back down. But beautiful selling at that 19 level and as well as underneath. You can see some really nice bursts that came in around the 90s and then the mid 80s. So I like what I see going on there. DWT, absolutely not. And that seems to be about it. I hope it's the weather. Jesus, hold on. Let me get some water. All right. That's better. All right. So anything else out there that I missed? Get here. I'm not sick. I feel great. It's just, whew. So that pretty much looks like it. I really like HTZ. I just want its volume to go up. 10,000 shares per minute is basically the minimum that I'll even accept to look at something, unless I think it has an opportunity for a trigger or some type of volume to come back into it. So it just goes over that. I just would like to get it, a little bit higher. All right. Other than that, our everyday stocks we're going to continue to watch. Based off of HTZ, based off of those prints, I'm going to start with 50 cents as always. I know nothing about HTZ. Its movements that are coming in today are based off of something. There's some type of new, obviously bad news or something that's going on within them. So I'm going to play 50 cent increments. Unless I know. So let's say there was prints at, 16. And then we pulled up all the way above, and then we have prints at 19 now, then I could give you a price target of 16. But when a stock is going towards its lows, I can only go as far as what the prints allow me to see. And in this case, it's about 50 cents. Hopefully TXN can make some for your I sure as hell would buy it. All right, guys, so let's get ready for the afternoon. We should certainly see some moves coming in. I mean, there's definitely some good stuff that we have out there. I'll be in the chat room for the rest of the day, and happy trading.